30 minutes to an hour easy, if not more. I have thought about a takeover. You know, if I ever go out to my thought is every chance, you know, until I learn more about how to operate it, I'll probably put water mileage model.
Engine you want to.
Yeah, and then you got your levers in there.
The what?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Model Railroading Live, #1 model railroading show on YouTube. This will be the first episode of the Bigger is Not Necessarily Better series. This started with a conversation that several of us were having, Bill and I, Ralph, Johnny, of course, that several of us were having in a regular late night show one night about the modifications that he was considering and undertaking eventually on his own layout, and you'll see that as we go through the next few shows. This will be a 4-part series starting tonight. Again, next Wednesday, following Wednesday. So look forward to those taking place very quickly, as has Bill's progress on his peninsula happened fairly quickly. Of course, a little housekeeping with some upcoming shows. Of course, we've got Johnny's Model Train Talk Show coming up every Thursday, so that'll be on tomorrow night. Look forward to seeing you guys join in and talk tomorrow night with us. Tuesday, February 11th, will be the next episode of The Build Show. And then Wednesday, February 12th, and I'm excited about this, Ralph's Weathering series will kick back off again. I'm really looking forward to what he's been talking about for that show as well. So this series and where this came from, Bill, is, and as the modern philosopher Mick Jagger says, you can't always get what you want, but you get what you need. So as a kind of a chicken and the egg kind of question, how did you get here? Did you realize there was something that you weren't happy with, or did you decide that you wanted something and were trying to figure out what you had to do or what you had to destroy in order to get to that place?
I think Andy, the first and foremost thing is that, you know, I think that the conversation that we had early was like, you know, the process of it, of doing a layout. When I was given this room that I'm in now, you know, I envisioned this empire, you know, I envisioned this entire bigger bigger railroad, and by any cost and any means, it was going to happen because, the 8-year-old in this at the time, what I did this in 2015. So when I was like 60 something years old, I was like, 58. It was like, this is what I wanted. So the 8-year-old in me wanted to emotionally have something like, grand and big. So, I reached out to Bill Baronic, the track planner at the time, and, we came up with several drafts. So it's not, I don't think the question is it a chicken or an egg that came first. I think it was in this case, it was the chicken, because I've always had other layouts and they were downstairs in the basement, and this 1, 2, 3, this would be the fourth one actually. But this was the biggest undertaking.
No question. And not to jump ahead too much, but just so we figure out where this landed and find out if this is a horror story or if this is a Greek comedy or exactly what kind of series we're going to undertake here. At the end of where you are right now, and as a little foreshadowing, and by all means, we're not going to give away what all you've done. You guys have got to look forward to a few more shows to see all the details of this as he lays it out. Because I know I've been, tertiary or secondarily involved with what he's been doing and watching along. And I know it's been a bit of a roller coaster, and you guys are going to get that roller coaster as well. But as a bit of foreshadowing, where are you landing right now? Are you like super happy with where it is? Is it an evolutionary process that you're happy to share with us? But I haven't, where do you think the progress that you've made with all of this major undertaking, where do you think this is going to land with your level of happiness with it? Are you stoked about it, super happy about it, or is it just an evolution?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that there's always been, I have to say that, putting pencil to paper and trying to come up with a bigger, better idea, a bigger, better layout. I think it's all our dream. Those that don't have one, those that want one. And I think that we should state in the beginning of this is not us telling you guys, this is a disclaimer. This is not us guys telling you guys what you should do or how you should do it or how you should build it or not build it. That's not what we're trying to accomplish here. The conversation that Andy and I were involved in, and it spawned this whole thing, is like the thinking process. Like when I wanted this layout, and my son moved out of the house, and this room was afforded to me. It was like I was blinded. I was like, this is what I want. So I reached out to the track planner. The track planner was like, yeah, we can give him dimensions. He gave me the questionnaires to fill out. I rushed it and I gave it to him. And to be quite honest, I think at this point with this new and this new peninsula, I think this is, to answer to your question, it makes me happy. I feel better with it. I feel much at peace with the way this turned out now. So, but on the overall, when I first built this layout, and I just had the bones of the layout, meaning just the structure, just the woodwork itself, just the framework, I got overwhelmed.
Oh, I empathize tremendously with you. And I said that recently when we were talking about that. I started buying around 2015 as well. And I have to say, 2019, even before I knew you were into this undertaking or where you were landing on it, 2019, I have felt just daunted by my project. And it, by like Model Railroad Magazine or Model Railroad Hobbyist Magazine, is not a large layout. Mine is a room much as yours is in layout size, but it has become a very overwhelming project for me. And just recently have I started finding a way to make peace with what I've taken on and start getting the enthusiasm and encouragement about it as I kind of solve problems. The way I solve my problems were a bit different than kind of the dynamite methodology that you've taken, and I'm envious. But and I'm not saying I didn't go there because I very much thought about some of that, and I think all of us do that.
I think on the overall, I mean, the layout is a point-to-point layout. That's the way it was designed, and it goes around the perimeter of the room. and then it comes in and ends in a peninsula. It was the peninsula that was giving me a pretty much not a hard time. I just was uncomfortable with it. And, the whole thing is when someone designs the plan, you don't want to deviate from the plan. And I've been told by Mr. Bill Baronic, that, it's your railroad, do what you want with it. But, there was a lot of give and take and effort on his part, my part, back and forth, him suggesting, I suggesting, more him suggesting than I suggesting, because he had a lot more knowledge of what it was that I should do. Because if it was up to me, I would have made the Maine to Florida, Appalachian Trail in the middle of it, and then tried to get the Colorado Rocky Mountain scenery into it as well, squeezed into this 10 by 13 room, which you can't put 5 pounds of chopped meat into like a 2-pound bag. So
But I think we all do that. It's such a common story to try to bite off something so large. And don't get me wrong, the layouts that I grew up loving from many years ago were these basement filling just empires that represented an entire subdivision of some fictitious or prototype railroad. But what I'm so fascinated by these days are the stories like what you're telling in this series, and the guys, some of the guys who are building much more focused layouts, regardless of size, much more focused, whether they're prototypical or freelance. My favorite railroad, the Allagash by Mike Koffler. It's a much more focused endeavor, and it feels focused. And it feels like the layouts feel like they tell a story more today than I ever remember that being the case growing up. Reading about these in the magazines. Excluding the Virginia and Ohio, which was absolutely a multi-part novel series of a storytelling layout, but most don't. But the story that you've been telling to us that have been listening to you recently is fascinating about where you got, how you found something that you wanted to change or was somewhat problematic for you. So how did you figure out you got to a point where there was something with the peninsula that was bugging you? How did you figure out what to do? Was it you and Bill Baronic? I'm sure that was part of
no,
it.
no, actually, it wasn't. It came down to me working on the layout and playing on the layout and running on the layout, and I noticed that I was operating more on one side of the room along the stretch and into the closet, because I have a walk-in closet that's 4 by 4 feet. So it extended the layout. So in it, and then on the staging area, which is right behind me here. And I found I wasn't doing anything on the layout. And it wasn't that I didn't want to do anything. And I did change the radius of the curves of the tracks that originally laid down. And that's due to my fault, because originally when I was laying the track, this is basically was the clubhouse turn, as we say in the racehorsing area. And I was coming around the clubhouse turn and I wanted to get it finished quickly. So I rushed through it. And in rushing through it, my radius was off, everything going into the yard, into the Brady yard, which was complicated to begin with. What I thought was hard, and it didn't fit right. And I had wound up going back to it. So once I got that all corrected over a year, it took me, I just wasn't happy with the way it was. And the kicker was I had a friend over, a gentleman that worked on major railroads. He started out in the Susquehanna Railroad, and then he moved on to Conrail, and he finished on Amtrak and retired in passenger service. And he worked for the Long Island Railroad as an engineer and stuff. He came over and he told me one day, he said, Bill, he says, I think you'll switch. It's a switching layout. He says, I think this is really a great layout, and it's got a lot of switching and a lot of movement, and there's a lot of places here you can lose yourself in and work and get wrapped up in the operation. He says, but your yard is complicated. And I was like, complicated. I think he says it's not complicated. Once you get used to it, I'm sure you're used to it, but it's like you really have to work through this. It's like a job. And I was unhappy with it because every time I'd be switching, I was like, this is becoming more like work than it's like anything else. And I'm not putting that down. I just wanted a little bit more simplified thing in my life. And, and the scenic divide was tall and it produced no light. It didn't have overhead track lighting here, LEDs, and it was dark in here. So I said, you know what? I think it's time to take this bad boy down.
Yeah.
And I reached out to Mr. Baronic and I said, Bill, I got no clue as to what to do here. I mean, I want to keep it the peninsula, but I got to do something. So we came back to me and he was like, we can keep it the same length, but we can shorten the width of it. And he says we can make it stub in, and stuff like that. I think I gave John a video. I think we can do it if we want, John. Can we do the video? Here you go. Welcome to Big Bill's train room. It's not. I don't have that cows. Just so you know that's a stock picture that John put up.
Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Big Bill coming to you from Catastrophe Railroad, aka South Brooklyn Railroad. Today, what we're going to do is I'm filming this from Model Railroading Live. We're going to make this one of the programs, one of the things we're doing on this, and it's going to be part of the Who's Big Bill Talking To. Who's Big Bill Talking To will be me talking to myself. But the reason why is because there's going to be some changes on the South Brooklyn Railroad. And part of the series that we want to do is the planning of layouts, the thinking of a layout, sort of like what Model Railroad Hobbyist is doing, Joe Fugate and those guys over there with the Toma system. But a little bit before that, the thinking process of it and, what to expect and what not to expect, basically. And it's always a full of surprises when you're going to either build one or change layouts or change anything on a layout. So what we're going to be doing on the South Brooklyn is William Baronic, you guys know him as the track planner. We got together in regards to doing something different on the South Brooklyn. We're not tearing the whole thing down, but we are making a substantial change to the layout. And one of the changes is that the peninsula, which you see before you, is void of all structures and basically void of any cars. I have the work case up there. What you see, this scenic divider is going away. All this track is going away. This actual peninsula, if you follow me, yes, the junkyard is gone, but the junkyard will resurrect again. Will resurrect. So don't everybody start jumping off bridges and sending me nasty emails and stuff like that. We do have it, but all this whole peninsula is coming down. Here are the buildings stored up on the track. This whole peninsula to the wall is coming. If my lovely photographer, sorry for my back, gentlemen, we'll be making the cut right here at the closet entrance, and from this point forward going around, this is all coming down. We're going to repurpose the lumber that's in here, the 1x3s, to build a new one. So this is going to be the start of something new, different, and exciting, because we're going to do something different with the peninsula. The peninsula is coming back, but not the same. Okay, it's going to be a different yard configuration, different setup, trying to make it as close to the Bush Terminal South Brooklyn Railroad as possible. And this is going to be part of a series that we're going to be doing, and you're also going to follow me on the build of this as we do go forward, building this and redesigning it, and from the mistakes, not that we made a mistake, but Mr. Baronic, aka the track planner, and I talked extensively about this. And I got the input of Andy Crawford and Ralph Renzetti and John Mitchell, my cohorts at Model Railroading Live, and we came up with the idea of doing a small series on this. So we want your input as well. We want to know what you think about the change. In further videos, I'm going to show you the plan that we came up, that Mr. Barana came up with. I'm not that smart, but just to assure you, the rest of the layout, all this into the closet, everything is staying. All of this is staying. It's not going away. It's not going away. It's staying here for as long as I guess I'm allowed to live here, or as long as I stay alive. We made a few changes on the thing in the closet. I put some 3/4 inch plywood up. In the closet, I made some modifications up here to put the buildings and other structures and stuff like that. That's a temporary situation. After everything is said and done, I'll pull that out and we'll go back to a regular closet with the Brooklyn Lollipop is staying, all that. The staging yard on the other side is staying. The only thing coming down is this. The whole peninsula is coming down. We're going to repurpose it and repurpose the lumber and repurpose the configuration of the peninsula. So, hey, please join us on this new adventure. It will be something we're going to be doing through October into November, and we want your feedback, and I hope you guys tune into it. So, in the meantime, you guys take care, God bless, and we'll see you on the radio.
What I was explaining there when the sound disappeared was that the rest of the layout was staying along the side walls and the back wall. The only thing that was coming down was the peninsula. That was the peninsula with the room divider in it. And as you can see on the video, it was a very tall. It was over almost 5 feet. It almost reached the ceiling. Not quite. It was down, but it was quite high. And when you were on the other side, if you were operating, there was no way for me to see you or you to see me. You basically had to communicate by talking. So what we've done is we've changed that all the way around. So it's like, and I think the purpose, and I want to go back to the original intent of this video, was that we don't want the modeler, the guy, the person, whatever, that's dreaming of this, had the 4x8, had the 8-foot shelf layout, now wants to get into something bigger and better. The question that I think I saw the thing, MHO Junction said, if you know what you do, bigger is better if you know what you're doing. You're absolutely correct. And it's not, I don't think it's a question, I really don't think it's a question of mechanical skills or carpentry skills. I mean, we all at some point have that. I think it's more of an emotional thing. I think it's that at whatever age you are, you got that 8-year-old in you that wants to build that big layout. And we go and we rush ahead after we've had this little 4x8 and we say, this is what we want. Because with social media today and technology, we get to see all these big, we get to see MHO's layout, Junction, Lloyd's layout. We see mine, we see yours, we see others, and then what happens is we go and we try to build something big, and and we get either burnt out or we get frustrated and walk away from it, and we get like, oh man, and then you become that disorientated kind of like, I don't want to do anything, anymore. And I think what we're trying to do in this video is that, yeah, there's a time and a point where you just, you do get burned out, you do get burned out, and that's all right. It's all right, because I got burned out. When I put the structure up and I put the bones on this thing, just the framework, I shut the door for 3-4 months and walked away from it. And I also have come to the realization that I don't have to be in here every day. I choose to be in here because it's a hobby.
Yep.
It shouldn't be a job. It should be where I can, hey, like right now, I'm in that manic phase, if you will. I'm building, I'm planning, I'm wiring, I'm putting new things down, I'm weathering. So right now you're into that. And then there comes that time where it's like, when it's said and done, which it's never really done, you know that, and I know that, and you guys out there know that. And it's just time to sit back and play with it. and playing is not bad. We should all,
So the enthusiasm comes back when you come back to it fresh from a moment. I mean, that enthusiasm is just starting, and I can feel it in my bones. The enthusiasm coming back to me as I started on these recent modules that we're building on the build series. I needed to do something again to move the bar forward a little bit, but I'd become so frustrated with it for a similar reason. So with yours and that petition envelopes, you had 2 5-foot rooms, give or take, right? You're basically standing in a 5-foot room, and that's the part that kinda got under your skin a bit, I suppose?
Yeah, it was just, just you walked in and the peninsula was long, it was big, and it was dark, and it was, and the funny thing is that my theme of my layout is based in the late 70s, 80s in New York City. It's built after the Bush Terminal Railroad, downtown Brooklyn, Sunset Park, Brooklyn to be exact. And it was during the time of urban decay, and it's like when everything was neglected, transit systems, sanitation, garbage strikes, transit strikes, and nothing was ever upkeep. So everything on here is like broken down, dirty, but it was just too, it was just too, too, I guess oppressive. I guess that's the word. That's
Yeah.
right. And it was just overwhelming me, and I was like, oh man. And I guess it was just a need for a change, and it was a change that went for good. And like I said, it's just that, the real, I think that conversation that me and you had was, wow, if guys just, instead of rushing headlong into something and sat down and said, hey, let me just write this going, on, let's just write it, down. Let's think this out before jumping in and saying, let me build this massive layout. And I got the room now, so let me build it. And then when you get built, you're like, okay, so what do I do with it now? How do I plan it? How do I track plan it? What do I want to do? Do I want to watch trains run around in a circle? Fine, that's great. No one says anything, that you don't have to do that, and the thing too, Andy, is the one thing about this hobby that separates us from other hobbies such as model building, uh, car building, airplane models, dioramas, ship dioramas. This is an actual living, breathing railroad. I mean, when you do this, you're actually making it come alive.
Absolutely.
You're making it come alive. So there's something to look forward to. Your ultimate goal is to run a train which has motion. I think Ralph Renzetti just said that. Motion. You need motion sensors on your lights. That way, your layout always welcomes you when you walk in. You're absolutely right. But our hobby is emotion. It moves, and there's a satisfaction in when we get it to work and we get it accomplished something, and we first time we turn the throttle on and the train moves. And now this technology where we have sound and we have lights and we have computers and we can do all those things, it still boils down to us using our two hands and our mind to work things out. And that's the enjoyment. And we don't want to not lose that enjoyment or get overwhelmed by it. So sometimes bigger is not necessarily better. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, I think it's not about bigger or even that the size is relevant. It does matter about your level of frustration and how you can maintain the level of enthusiasm. But what you're going to be happy with in the end, if you could just say this, if you could just wish it into existence, would you choose a super large layout or a smaller layout? That's tough to say. And, and I think that we all get manipulated is a strong word, but we all get inspired. That's the right way. We all get inspired to build these basement feeling huge empires. But exactly what will make you happy may or may not be a large layout. And I think it entirely depends on an individual's vision. And something I think is so great about our hobby is that it is an unbelievably individualized and unique hobby to each and every one of us. None of us are the same personality as we were talking about a few days ago. We're all very different personally, but that also shows in the types of layouts that we love and the types of layouts that we end up building for ourselves. They're all very unique which is the art that's in the hobby. It's kind of bringing a vision to fruition that's quite different. And I think even if you're building something large, the stuff like Joe Fugate's Tolman stuff that you've used and talked about a bit as some of the inspiration for your peninsula, thinking about that as a thing, the peninsula being a thing, and that you weren't thinking about the rest of the world because it was all thing put. You were thinking about this one thing. You could narrow the focus. And even if you're building a large layout, and I've talked about it with my own before, is that I think about it in small pieces because it becomes so overwhelming to try to design meeting multiple decks and a whole lot of it to get it perfect. And I've changed my mind a bunch all through it because all I'm worried about is roughly the couple modules I'm working on. And I
Yeah.
think that's beautiful in your case is that you've been able to think about just the peninsula and focus on it being right for you to meet whatever vision you're going for.
Yeah. I'd like to address something Robert Holman says here. He says, I'm just at the point where I go out to work on something, and I just have the feeling of I don't really want to be doing this right now. And I just want to tell you, Rob, that's an absolutely natural thing that happens to all of us. It really does. And anybody that tells you it doesn't is not telling you the truth. We do get into that funk. We do. And I got into it for a while, and it does. It becomes because you look at when you walk into your hobby room and like I said, it's a layout, regardless of how big it is. Sometimes you just don't feel like doing anything, and sometimes it just becomes a little overwhelming. And you're like, you sit down and you say, well, what did I get into here? What did I actually? What am I doing? What's the purpose?
And it's a bunch of different emotions. Like I got to a point where I wanted to do it, but I was so overwhelmed trying to figure out what to do. And I got to a point where there were some little things that were nagging at me. I mean, I didn't dislike it. I wasn't ready to chainsaw the thing, but I got to a point where I couldn't figure out exactly how I wanted to go with some of it. And Ralph was just saying, just go do it, just do it. And I have done quite a bit of that. But, sometimes you have to take a step back to figure out exactly as your vision matures, as the evolution or as the journey of building a model railroad changes. In your case, we've all got to follow along with that journey for 4 or 5 years now. And your vision changes and adjusts. So I'm curious about one thing specifically. Could you, and not to be rude, but could you have figured this out from the beginning? Or is this something that just needed to come to you via that journey?
No, I'll be honest with you. No, I could not figure it out at the beginning, and I'll tell you why I couldn't figure it out at the beginning. I couldn't figure it out because I wanted what I wanted it. I wanted what I wanted, and I wanted it right now.
Yeah.
And my wife will attest to this. She said to me, "You have to slow down." She said to me one day, "You got to slow down." Now, when I had retired from my job, I had money set aside for this. I had saved money up. This was something that was in my retire. When I said I was retiring and I knew my son was leaving, and his transition of getting out of the house and this, I had started putting, money together. So when you say, could I have cut this or saved it or shut it down before this happened so I wouldn't have made these changes? No, because I was blinded. I really was. I was that 8-year-old kid that was like, I want what I want, and I want this right now. Now, we all have kids or we all have grandchildren. We know when they get into that one track, and pun intended, mindset where they want what they want, they are relentless. I was relentless. I went and did the whole thing. The only point that it came to, for me, the realization was when my buddy Darren and he helped do this with me, build it. We built the structure. It was then when he left that day, that afternoon, I'll never forget it. I was in this room by myself, and I looked at the structure, and I looked what I had done, and what we had done, what we had built, and I was like, what did I get into? What did I do? And then all the questions plagued me. Can I handle this? Do I know what I'm doing? Do I have the confidence to do what I'm doing? Can I build the structures? Can I change the the thought, the fantasy in my head. Now I'm not promoting Bill Baronic's track planning business. What I'm saying about a third party or a second objective party, my wife was the objective party, but she's biased and she's close to me, and I've been married over 45 years to her. I've known her for 5, so it's almost close to 50 that she knows me. So she's telling me, you got to slow down, slow down, slow down. Bill Baronic was the stern parent. See, when I went to Bill Baronic, and Bill Baronic has this whole questionnaire thing that you fill out, and I was on fire. He's that stern dad that turns around and says, well, I hate to inform you, but the answer is no. And I'm like, no? What do you, it's my money, it's my time, my effort. You can't tell me. He says, I can tell you that what you want, you can't have because it's unrealistic. And once that happened, then I started getting into the phase of like, okay, is this something I really want to do? And it wasn't like I said earlier, the structure was up, that I started having doubts about it. And Robert, going back to your question, going back to your feeling, like I feel like I'm just. Sometimes it's just best just to sit there. Sometimes it's just best to sit there, rearrange your paint bottles, take the time to clean up your soldering iron, take time to vacuum the rugs or the floor, clean up, get the debris off the table, whatever it is you got to do. It will come. It's a period. It's a low. It's a high. It's a low. It's a high. But it's just the fact that it's there, and and Mike Lamberti wanted to know. I think he came in late. Do we see it here? Trying to find.
And I think there's times to do different things. Part of what it helped me for a while was taking breaks and building some structures and building some resin rolling stock. Some of that is just me procrastinating. And sometimes it's me procrastinating, but then there's other times when I hadn't moved for a while, I just decided, like building the modules that I'm working on now, that I just wanted to do something to move the bar forward and to regain the enthusiasm, even if it was wrong. So you got to know when to do something, even if it's wrong, when to take a break, and you don't always know. So I've just done each of those things until I found the thing that has somewhat satisfied me at a given moment.
Right, and I'm not saying you're right. Some of these guys, like Michael Lamberti, wanted to know. He came in. Lampino wanted to know what was wrong with the Peninsula. Why are you changing it? Just tuned in. Mike, just to give you a heads up and a recap of what we're doing here. We're basically doing a 4-part series on bigger is not necessarily better. And I had changed that. It was a conversation that was had between me, Ralph Renzetti, Andy, and it was born out of a conversation where planning was essential, and most people just jump in feet first into the pool and, basically want to expand or get the bigger empire. And I used my peninsula because some modifications that I wanted to make and going to change it. So I just decided to take the entire peninsula down and resurrect a new peninsula. And I'm using this peninsula rebuild as the subject of this 4-part series, So that's basically where we're at right now. And you're right. To the guys out there, it's like, it's a process. It's a process. And I think that what we want to do here on Model Railroading Live with this 4-part series is to start out slow, to think about what you want to do and how you want to do it. MHO Junction, Lloyd says it took me 2 years before I ran trains. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And sometimes we gotta, like, I know with this rebuild of the peninsula, like I'm taking my time before I scenic or do anything. I'm right now in the process of wiring. I'm in the process of right now of building structures, and I'm doing it the way I wanted to do it the first time, but I want to get it done so fast and so quick that I overlook certain steps that I shouldn't have done, and I paid the price for it, which was extra labor, extra time, extra cost financially. And I think this really is, in my truest opinion, I really think model railroading has an emotional and spiritual component to it.
No question.
in this crazy world of ours, there's some sort of a peace and there's some sort of relaxation here. I know I find it. I come in here and I work for a little while, and it just calms me. It really truly calms me. You
And
know?
it's a bit of a roller coaster. There's been times when I was so unbelievably frustrated, and then the gratification of solving those problems was very satisfying. And I don't want to give too much away about what you're going to talk about on the future shows, but just to comment on one thing that I think that I love about what you're doing here is that I see so rarely done that I agree you may not have figured out from the beginning. But the open peninsula and being able to work, you and one of your prototype railroad guys comes over, a couple guys standing around the peninsula can work and talk and chit chat while you're drinking coffee and running the railroad in a much more, and I think it's the only way to do a prototype or to do a yard in a prototypical, quote unquote, prototypical way that is believable is to have aisles that, have it open to 2 aisles. Because you can get to things, whereas I don't care what you do with a single shelf, regardless of how big your layout is, it's very hard to reach and very hard to wrap your head around conceptually if you're looking against a backdrop on this little narrow shelf.
Yeah, right. After a while, yes, you're right. Michael Lambertini wanted to know, so you weren't happy with the track plan. Actually, Mike, I was very happy with the track plan. I just wasn't happy with the configuration of the track. So I guess I'm answering my own question. It's a contradiction in terms, right? I'm trying to say I was happy when in actuality I wasn't. I was happy with it, but there was a lot of work. The yard was very complicated. It was a complicated yard to get in and out of. It became work. It also became maintenance. I had to do a lot of maintenance, whereas on the other tracks and the yard against the walls, a straight rail all the way around. On the new yard, which you'll see later on in the upcoming series, you'll see that it's more linear. The new yard, it's more linear. It coincides with the other parts of the railroad, but there's industries along the linear track where it runs, and it's opted for what
And
it
it's
was.
not cramped. It feels very natural or prototypical or it feels very pragmatic what I've seen of the work. It looks like the way a yard would be laid out, and it looks more believable in its configuration because it's not cramped. And those of us who follow the channel, pretty much all of us know that some months ago we had to do some work on this turnback curve because it gave you some maintenance frustrations. And
Right, and they were good frustrations. They weren't like brats. What did I do? This was a waste of time and money. It wasn't like that. And I hear what you're saying, Lloyd. You had a plan and you thought about it. You knew what you were getting into. I guess I have to say, in all honesty, I didn't know what I was getting into because that 8, 9-year-old in me, that emotional side of me, was like, you know what? I want this, and I'm going to make it, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to, whatever it costs, I'm going to do. And, what did it cost me? I learned a lot of things. I have to say that. I did learn a lot of things about myself. I learned about my limitations, what works, what doesn't work. And I think it was a good emotional barometer for me of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And now it's like everything else. You hear guys say, oh, this is my 16th layout. I finished it, and now I'm tearing it down and building a new one. And they learn from their past 15 mistakes, 15 layout mistakes, and they build a better one the 16th until they tear that down and then go on to the 17th. This basically, I think, is going to be, this is it. This is the layout. This is the one I'm going to live with, and I don't want to really get, any more. Do I like this layout? Yeah, I do. I like it very much, and I like what it has done. It's introduced me to all you guys out there. Now, first and number one, Andy, John, all you guys, Lloyd, William A. You Are Naked, Sparky, all you guys out there. It has definitely, got to know you and doing this hobby. It's like I said earlier, it's a living, breathing hobby. You work on it and it comes to life. stuff like that.
Oh, I think the friendship and all the serious models that have been at it for a long time, also the friendships are the most valuable part. And I absolutely definitively know I didn't until just recently, and I got frustrated with mine. But I know that I would have gotten to that frustration point 2 years ago if it hadn't been for this community. Because as much debate and arguing and good natured fun that we have with each other, it's incredibly encouraging the conversations that we have about this stuff.
Yeah, well, Naked Force says, and I agree 100%. It's a spiritual journey because it's creative, and creativity is an expression of self. We put something of ourselves into our art. It is sharing a personal slice of ourselves with the world, much like art or music. And that is so very, very true. Every part of this layout, every section of this layout has a story to it. Every industry, from the Perez Concrete Company to the Warren Street Power Plant to the Brooklyn Lollipop Company to the O'Shea's Junkyard and the 8805 Mechanic Shop. If we
Tells a personal story.
there's a story behind each one, that someone in my life that I dedicated that part of that structure to, and it's there. And the creativity is a part of me, is a part of what I live for and understand, and what's part of my life. And a part of me is on this layout,
And my bet is that if you've done a brief video tour of 10 layouts and then had a brief conversation with 10 modelers, that most people could match the modeler to the layout. Every layout, just seeing the layout, I think personally tells you quite a bit about that modeler who is building that layout.
Right. When I got to Joe Desmond's house, now we've all seen Joe on our shows. When I saw Joe Desmond's N scale layout, it represents Joe Desmond. You can actually say, after you get to know the man, you say, this is Joe Desmond. This is, that. And I think that's the thing, say the hobby is dying, and why is the hobby dying? It's we're in a quick fix solution situation. We want it now. You go on your cell phone and you Google it and you got it now. This is the fruits of labor that take time. You go out and you buy the box, the model, you shake it. For me, I'm like a little kid. I get a box, a model, and I shake it. And it's like, I can't wait to get home and open this. But I got to calm myself, because I got to say, okay, this is how I want to do it. This is the way I want to do it. This is how I want to plan it. Because why? Because when I was 8 and 9, I didn't know anybody. So I got the glue all over the place, and I did what I had to do. And, I rushed it and I painted it, and it looked amateurish. Now that I'm older and I got a little bit more knowledge, and I watch a lot of YouTube videos and watch you guys out there, I start thinking, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it's exciting. Kids today, the youth today, they don't want it now. They don't want it yesterday. They don't want to wait for it in 5 days. What do we do now, Uncle Bill? Well, now we wait for the paint to dry. What? Yeah, we have to wait for this to dry before we move on to the next step. And that's all part of this. That's all part of the accomplishment. I can tell you, and I'm sure most of you out there would know this, and true. You could do a little thing. Here a perfect example. You could do this water tower, right? Weather it, put it together, and this would take you maybe, an average guy like myself, it took me 45 minutes to an hour. All right, just putting it together and then weathering it and the whole thing, right? But the sense of accomplishment is like so satisfying when you go inside to make yourself a cup of coffee. It's like, what did you do? I just put together this awesome water tower. For her, it's not a big deal. For anybody else, it's not a big deal. But for us, it is, and it's just something I think that the hobby, we as the hobbyists and the model railroad I think that doing a layout is what we want to accomplish in this series, is like just let's not get burnt out. Let's not get overwhelmed. Eric Hall has a big layout, and he works through his layout, and you have Lloyd, and he has a big layout, and he's working through it, and we can all learn from that. Sparky has just built a shed and is putting a big layout together. So
What I think it a lot has to do, in my opinion, it's a lot to do with the size of the undertaking too. And that's not just physical dimensions. In my case, my layout's not necessarily that large, 15 by 15, but the size of the undertaking. It's complex with a lot of really challenging things. So the challenges sometimes become somewhat frustrating, but those challenges are what are so gratifying about what we've done, about what all of us do as well, is the satisfaction of overcoming it. And while a lot of people are short attention span these days, there's also quite a few younger people. And there's a lot of these 30 somethings that are getting in the hobby now that are doing these, going to the RPM shows, that are doing super detailing on rolling stock and stuff. There's a lot of people that come from the short attention span generation who are just striving to find those challenges to overcome that require the commitment of time, which is why I think our hobby is so well suited to this maker movement that's happening in the youth.
I believe. Well, Adrian Gaston makes a good point here. He says, just add water and poof, layout done with these new people sometimes.
No doubt.
And
But I
really,
wouldn't have it if I could just buy it. I wouldn't have it that way anyway. This journey that Bill's taking us on the story of over this episode, the next few episodes, that journey is the journey that I wanted to take on when I started my own layout. It's the journey that I found so unbelievably frustrating and unbelievably gratifying in the same breath as I went through it. And these couple shows, including this one and the next few, is Bill taking us on a little small portion of that frustration and gratification.
and Dale PRR Guy Bass, he says, we are not just playing with trains. We are artists and storytellers. We tell the story and we tell history, not just on trains. And he's so right about that, because most of the guys out there, and I know, a lot of guys have done tons and tons of research, whether it's a freelance thing where they make it up, they've seen something they like and they research it. I know for myself with the Bush Terminal Railroad in Brooklyn back in the 1920s up until the early 60s, it was a major component, a major factor in transportation and freight being transported into the lower part of Brooklyn from the Jersey side through car barges, freight car barges into Brooklyn. And they had an extensive yard. They had the Davis Pipe Yard. They had all the 7 Bush terminal buildings with major industry, 6 foot tall, big industrial buildings. And and that's the enthusiasm, once you into it. And that's what you want. You want to model that, but you can't. Like I said, if it was up to me, I'd model Maine to Florida with the Appalachian Trail. I know I'm repeating myself, but we sometimes, over glorify it in our fantasy. That's why the track plan is like the stern dad. He's the reality. You talk to him and he says, okay, this is what you can do. This is definitely what you can't do. It's like that old cartoon. The guy's throwing the stuff out of the engine because of the stuff that you put in there that you think is going to make it run better. And then the guy comes in, he takes it all out, and it's running perfectly. So, but that's what we hope to accomplish with this series. Just a little knowledge, a little fun, and a little insight into things. And again, a disclaimer is, Andy, like we said earlier, this is not the way that we want you to do it. It's not us telling you how to build, why to build, a big one, small one, what scale. Just basically do some thinking, some planning, ask questions, ask people in the know. Reach out to people who you see on MRL, who you see on YouTube videos. Text them or, write in their comments. Hey, can you email me, and put down your email address? And, that's the only way you're going to find out. And on top of that, you make some really great friendships, and you get to really know some great people out there.
And just consider it based on the experience that you're sharing with us of your personal experience, your personal journey. just consider how much of a layout you want to take on, at least for the beginning, because they can all be changed and they can all grow and expand, as I'm sure all of our layouts will change. That's one thing that I wanted, and the reason my layout is somewhat designed or constructed the way it is because every layout I've ever had I wanted to change, and I wanted it to be somewhat easy to change.
Yeah.
So, anything in closing before we close this up, Bill, and go on to the next show that you'd like to add to it? And also, could you possibly summarize one thing for some of the viewers as just a last takeaway? Is there a brief summary that you should tell others to consider of what you've learned so far that they can take away in the journey of building a layout from the beginning to side views?
Well, I think to summarize this whole thing, I think that the journey of this has been one of it's been an emotional one, I have to say. And I go back to Eric Hall's thing where he says getting small chunks done at a time is very exciting. Just getting the Salt River Valley Yard into operation was huge for me, meaning him, but that was so last year's projects. I'm looking forward to doing the next. I think in summation, I think it is. It was an emotional journey. It still is to some extent, but watching it come together and the finalization of it, if there is such a thing as a finalized thing in a model railroad, but just watching it come to life and watching it change and just having fun with it. And I think that as we go forward, we're going to have some pretty special guests on. We're not going to tell you who they are, but we definitely are going to have some special guests on who are going to talk about layouts and the planning phases of it. On the overall, at the end of the day, I think this is a great hobby. I think this is a great relaxation. I think it's a time where you find your serenity, your peace, your place in what life is. I mean, we all have families, we all have situations with families, whether it's sons and daughters, marriages, whatever, the world outside, social media, what's going on politically, spiritually, in the world itself. And not that we put our head in the sand like an ostrich and duck away from it, but it's a little bit of a respite. It's a little bit, like, hey, I got an idea, on the commute home from work, and you're thinking about it, and it pops into your head. And you know what? I'm going to change the wheels out on that car that's been giving me a problem. Or, hey, I got an idea to change this out and put a switch in here and do that. So at the end of the day, it's, have fun.
I think
Life's
that's the greatest success
too
you
short.
can have. And that's right. That's the greatest success you can have. And I say to people all the time on the Build Show is that this is how I'm doing it, or the experience I have. And while I love an operational layout of some kind, if at the end of the day you are happy with your hobby, if you are entertained, because these are our hobbies, if you're entertained, that is the only bar of success that there is in our hobby. Are you happy with your results? And if not, change them some.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Absolutely.
All right, guys, we've got, again, this will be a 4-part series. This was the first one as we talked over where Bill was coming from, the thoughts that had yielded into this massive construction that you're going to see over the next few episodes that came out of multiple conversations and Bill's diligent work to do what he did to his layout. Look for the next show of that next Wednesday. I'm looking forward to that one, of course. We'll see you guys on Johnny's talk show tomorrow night. And then again, February 11th for the Build Show, and then Ralph's Weathering Show starting on the 12th to look forward to. So a lot of content starting as we start out this year, starting fairly strong with, again, the #1 model railroading show around. On Model Railroading Live tonight. Thanks so much for sharing this journey with us, Bill. I'm really excited to see how this goes forward into what the comments and responses are.
You gotta let me do my sign off, son. And we'll see you guys on the radio. Good night and God bless.